So we have already heard stories today from around the world highlighting how access to insulin and diabetes supplies is still an issue in 2021. And we have seen how people are struggling, even dying. 100 years after the discovery of insulin, we know there is still much work to be done. That is why we are here, why you are here. So you may have a loved one with diabetes, or a friend, a coworker, maybe your parents, if you see yourself. So to just get a sense of who is joining us today, we'd love for everyone to tell us, what is your relationship to diabetes? So if you can go ahead, take a moment to type it in the chat. Okay, great. Okay, I see a lot of different relationships coming in. I see a lot of patients, I see parents, I see partners, I see friends. You may even fill more than one of these roles. So not only is there room in the movement for all of us, but the success of the movement really hinges upon as many voices as possible coming together to advocate for that change. It relies on solutions developed by bringing our diverse perspectives together. And today we want to take some time to look at interesting facts, common misconceptions, so that we all leave this space feeling better equipped to advocate. And with that, hi everyone, my name is Kate. I am the US Operations Manager at T1I, and I have been living with diabetes for 20 years.
Thanks, Kate. My name is Katie Soros. I am the Global Advocacy Consultant at T1 International, and I've been living with type 1 diabetes for 16 years.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. My name is Tolu Jules, and I'm a Supporter Engagement Coordinator here at T1 International, and I've had type 1 diabetes for over 24 years.
Thanks, Tolu. I'm Allison Hart. I'm one of the advocacy managers at T1 International, and my partner has had type 1 for 37 years, so I'm coming to the movement as an ally. So as we've seen, we have a mix of patients, allies, caregivers, and all sorts of different relationships to diabetes represented today in our audience. All of us are here to support this movement. But it's challenging to stand side by side with a person living with diabetes and be a supportive ally if you have misconceptions about diabetes. So we know those misconceptions can come from all sorts of sources: media, pop culture, sometimes even friends and family, or even religious beliefs and your own governments. We may not even realize when we're internalizing those. But today what we wanted to do was take some time to talk through some diabetes myths and facts, and we'd love to get your feedback along the way in the chat. So what we're going to do is share a statement and ask you to weigh in the chat. Is this a myth or a fact? We'll share our answers based on T1 International's approach and our experiences, and we hope that these are helpful discussion starters for you in your families and communities and other networks. So our first slide. You have to have diabetes to care about the insulin crisis. So go ahead and tell us in the chat, myth or fact? Enthusiastic myths. I love all the exclamation points. Indeed, this is true. Maybe we're starting with the softball, but we agree. The high cost of prescription drugs impacts everyone, and we believe that access to insulin is a human right. As we have already heard today, its creators intended it to be a gift to the world, not a moneymaker for the greed-blind pharmaceutical industry. So to make change in our local communities and around the world, we need the voices of everyone this issue impacts. T1 International is a patient-led organization. What does that mean? It means we are committed to having patients in leadership and on our team, as you've seen. And it means that our work is driven by the needs and priorities of a variety of patient perspectives within the diabetes community. So that said, we also believe in a world where we recognize and accept and celebrate differences, and we know that allies and caretakers have valuable perspectives to add. So to us, this is reflective of the wider Insulin for All movement because we are stronger together. We will make the biggest impact and achieve our mission sooner if we work together as patients and allies. If you are here today and you feel that it is wrong, that 100 years after its discovery, people are still struggling to access and afford insulin because profits are being prioritized over the lives of patients around the world, you are a part of this movement. We are here to support everyone in getting involved and raising their voices for Insulin for All. Now I'll pass it to Kate.
Thanks, Allison. Okay, so for our next statement, it is that diabetes looks a certain way. Is this a myth or a fact? If you can let us know in the chat. All right, equally emphatic answers. So yes, it is a myth. People living with diabetes tend to be portrayed through a very narrow or outdated lens in the mainstream media. And this can be very isolating, very frustrating for some patients. You know, diabetes is a unique experience for each patient. Diabetes spans all ages, genders, body types, races, cultures, and socioeconomic spectrums. Similarly, our symptoms of hypo and hypers vary by person, as do the appropriate and preferred treatment methods that people choose. So it is important to remember that there is no singular right way to be a patient or navigate diabetes. And it can be really harmful to make assumptions. And the best way you can truly learn about what diabetes looks like is by listening deeply and supporting patients' voices and giving them the space to be seen and share their stories. All right, so for our next slide, diabetes is not the patient's fault. Again, myth or fact, tell us in the chat. Okay, yes, fact. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. The body does not recognize its own insulin producing beta cells, and instead the immune system attacks and destroys them. It is not a result of eating too much sugar or certain foods, laziness, or other lifestyle choices that are often incorrectly associated with diabetes. People with living with diabetes, including type 2 diabetes or other types of diabetes, did not bring it on themselves. And no one wants to experience health issues. All of us want to be healthy, and many factors and privilege points or lack thereof can play into someone's health diagnosis and health outcomes. A large part of being a good ally is not stigmatizing or placing blame on patients, as well as helping to dispel misinformation and speak up against those harmful and all too common jokes that we see associated with really false diabetes stereotypes. So for all the patients in the room, can you give us a +1 in the chat if anyone in your life has ever implied that diabetes is your fault? Yeah, unfortunately, it is something we see a lot. All right, now I'm going to pass it on to Tolu.
Thank you, Kate. So another fact, everyone has access to supplies. So if a person with diabetes is having high or low blood sugar levels, it is because they are not taking care of themselves. Is that a myth or a fact? And that is correct. It's a myth. We might have heard people make statements such as, he's a bad diabetic, or this patient is non-compliant. These languages are very harmful to patients and to individuals. As a community, it is important to be educated on diabetes and its physiology, and that's how it works. People with type 1 diabetes cannot produce insulin no matter how hard they try. They can only take synthetic insulin, which is constant job that a pancreas has to do for somebody that does not have diabetes. And most times it truly is a trial and error, as you can eat the same thing every day and take the same amount of insulin every day, but get different blood sugar readings each time, simply because it cannot be precise as a beta cell. Therefore, one person cannot have type 1 diabetes worse than another person. And the same can be said with people with type 2 diabetes, where their bodies cannot produce the insulin efficiently as they used to. Complications of diabetes should never imply that someone is doing a bad job at managing diabetes, as despite a person's best and constant efforts at managing diabetes, fluctuation in blood sugar can be due to so many different factors and is ultimately inevitable. And it will be a part of the game, and that does not imply failure, but rather they highlight that what a constant job it is to manage diabetes, whether you have type 1 or type 2. Likewise, access to insulin and diabetes supplies is far from equal. Many people still have to buy the insulin from unreliable sources because they do not have health insurance. The price of insulin is there in their community so high, and they cannot pay for that out of pocket. Things like war or natural disasters makes access to insulin very difficult. So telling someone that they should go get a continuous blood sugar monitor, for example, or use an insulin pump, or work harder to take care of their diabetes ignores the huge inequity faced by people with diabetes worldwide. If you can't test your blood sugar multiple times a day, then how can you even afford to get a pump? Recognizing our diabetes privilege is important, and fighting for equal access for all is what T1 International is truly about. I got one more for you guys. So diabetes does not need to be a death sentence. Is that a fact or truth or myth? And you guys are awesome. That is definitely a fact. It is not a death sentence for many, but lack of access to insulin supplies and healthcare is. So over 10 decades ago, type 1 diabetes was considered death sentence, as the majority of people living with type 1 diabetes then did not survive past 2 years of being diagnosed. So these days, it's not what it is. And this was due to the lack of research and understanding of conditions and lack of life-saving treatments. However, since the discovery of insulin over 100 years ago, numerous advances thereafter has been significant improvement in life expectancies of people with type 1 diabetes. But today, many people around the world living with type 1 diabetes still do not have access to insulin and the supplies that they need to survive due to affordability or just not being able to access them. This has led to many people dying needlessly and many having to rationalize their insulin. And I'll pass that over to Katie.
Thanks, Tolu. You all are doing so well with this game, and we thought you would. And we hope that these, our discussion today might help you as you talk to people who might not know as much about diabetes and the diabetes community. So let's see how you do with this next statement. Once we can provide free access to insulin and diabetes supplies, people with diabetes will have everything they need to live healthy, full lives. Is that a myth or a fact? All right, yeah, see some answers coming in. That's right, this is a myth. The truth is that, insulin and other essential diabetes medications are just the most basic ingredients of a healthy life with diabetes. When people with diabetes can access the medications and supplies they need, they still need education and social and emotional support to manage the effects of living day in and day out with a chronic condition. So what we're doing and fighting for to address the basic needs of access to insulin and other diabetes medications might allow people to move on to some of those higher up needs that enable not just survival, but also happiness and true health. We'll go on to our last statement. Yeah, I see emotional support is super important coming in. A lot of our volunteers around the world are working on some of these other issues that face people in the diabetes community as well. So our last statement, even though a person who doesn't have diabetes can never truly understand what it's like to live with diabetes, it's important that they try. Is that a myth or a fact? Getting some good exclamation marks here. Fact, please. Looks like we're agreeing that it's a fact. Good. So feeling heard and understood is an essential part of feeling empowered and supported. And allies really play an important role in this. So just by being curious and listening, and sometimes even offering an outsider's perspective on the mental and the physical and the emotional energy of diabetes, allies can reflect back to the person with diabetes all of the hard work that they're doing and validate the needs that they're expressing. So it's important for a person who doesn't have diabetes, even close caretakers and significant others, to realize and acknowledge that while they may know a lot about diabetes and even do a lot of work themselves, they really can't know what it feels like inside to have diabetes. And that's part of why T1 International promotes a patient-led movement, because there's no way other than being a patient to fully understand some aspects of diabetes. And similarly, allyship will be strengthened by patients acknowledging that they can't fully understand what it's like to be in the position of supporting someone with diabetes as a parent, as a caretaker, or as a close loved one, while not having that firsthand physical experience. Because of this, both sides must share their experiences with the other with respect and humility and compassion. I'll turn it back to Allison.
Thanks, Katie. So we have one more. Excuse me, a person has to have time, have done advocacy before, have resources, or a strong understanding of the issues to get involved. Myth or fact? Hopefully that one, yep, we're seeing lots of agreement there. It is a myth. Advocacy is for everyone, as it's simply supporting people to find their voice. If you haven't been involved as a volunteer in the movement, and today has inspired you to take more action, we will be having a informal kind of Q&A session with a few of T1 International staff members and our key volunteers to help you answer any questions at the end of the day about getting started. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that no matter what your relationship to diabetes is, this has been helpful in giving space to consider the diversity of experiences that people with diabetes have and has empowered you on your advocacy journey. Back to Ian, thanks.